We have now reached the final step of chapter 1. Earlier, we looked at emotional weather. We looked at nonverbal traces. And we looked at the gap between the baseline egogram and the fluctuation happening in the moment. Now we need to bring those scattered pieces together into one map. That map is the momentary egogram. The momentary egogram is a real-time waveform that shows how the energy of the mind is moving in a particular scene. If the baseline egogram is the usual blueprint, the momentary egogram is today's wave drawn on top of that blueprint. It lets us see where energy rose above the usual level. It lets us see where energy dropped below it. And it helps us see how the mind's engine is responding to the weather of this particular moment. The momentary egogram brings these separate signals together so we can read them as one map. What matters here is not the absolute score by itself. Of course, we still notice what is high and what is low. But Torbit TA does not stop with a statement like, this ego state is high right now. The more important question is this. What changed compared with the usual blueprint? Which direction did the energy move? And in what kind of scene did that change appear? That changes the gap. For example, if CP rises above its usual level, the present flow may have become stricter or firmer. The person may feel a stronger urge to correct someone. Their tone may become rigid. Their expression may become more decisive. If AC rises far above its usual level, the person may move toward adjusting, enduring, or stepping back. They may smile while feeling uncomfortable inside. They may say, I'm okay, even when they are not. They may check the other person's reaction before checking their own needs. In contrast, if A drops below its usual level, the person's normal ability to observe and organize may have weakened under pressure. Their mind may go blank. Words may become difficult to organize. The ability to look at the situation calmly may temporarily move back. The key is not to label high and low as good or bad. We look at what became overheated. We look at what temporarily dropped. We look at where the range of choice became narrower. Only then can we begin to see what needs to cool down and what may need to come back online. To read the momentary egogram more deeply, it helps to look at three things. First, look at the highest point. A point that rises unusually high above the baseline may show where energy is concentrated right now. It may be the part of the mind doing the most work, or it may be the part that reacted most sensitively. But a rise is not automatically negative. It may be strength that came forward to protect someone. It may be a healthy boundary in an unfair situation. On the other hand, it may also be overheating. Someone may push another person too hard because anxiety is driving the reaction underneath. The same rise can mean different things depending on the context. Second, look at the lowest point. This is where energy has dropped sharply below the usual level. It may show that a needed part of the mind's engine has frozen and is not functioning well. But again, a drop is not automatically negative. A person may temporarily lower one kind of output to focus on something more important. It may be a pause used to stop and observe. But if fear or anxiety prevents the person from using a function they need, the flow may be closer to freezing. Third, look at the slope. Notice how the high and low points connect. A gradual line may suggest that energy is moving with some flexibility. A sharp rise or drop, more like a cliff, may suggest that energy is concentrating very quickly in one direction. When that happens, it is also worth asking whether A temporarily lost the position of observation. So when we read the momentary egogram, we do not look only at high and low points. We look at where energy rose, where it dropped, and how sharply the movement changed between them. That movement tells us something about what the mind is doing right now. There is one more thing we need to remember. Numbers alone show only half of the picture. Numbers can show us what changed. But to understand why the waveform took that shape, we also need to read the flow of the ego states behind the numbers. The same change can carry very different stories. Imagine that CP rises. On the graph, the rise may look the same, but the meaning can be very different. The person may be becoming firm in order to protect someone. They may be setting a boundary in an unfair situation. In that case, the rise may work like a protective shell. But the person may also be pushing someone aggressively in order to hide anxiety. Then the same rise may be overheating. That makes the interaction more rigid and dry. A rise in AC can also mean different things. It may be careful attention to the relationship. It may be consideration that helps a difficult situation pass more smoothly. But it may also be excessive compliance that erases personal needs. A rise in NP can reflect warm care. But it can also become over-caring that leads to self-exhaustion. A drop in A is not automatically a defect either. It may be a natural moment when emotion temporarily comes before thought, or the pressure may be so strong that the actual ability to observe and organize has weakened. So numbers are the starting point. We do not judge a person from numbers alone. We read the scene and context behind them. Ego state analysis is not about forcing meaning onto numbers. It is about seeing the structural flow behind the numbers more clearly. Even the same waveform may need to be read differently depending on the context. Is this a force that protects me? Or is it an automatic reaction that narrows me? Is this carefulness helping the relationship? Or is it compliance that erases my own needs? We have to read those questions inside the actual scene. This is where the attitude of Torbit TA becomes clear. Torbit TA chooses the language of tuning rather than the language of judgment. It does not rush to say, it is too high. This is a problem. This is abnormal. Instead, it may read the flow like this. You are becoming firm in order to protect yourself right now. You're using adjusting energy to get through anxiety. You're trying to hold on to an engine that has frozen. This kind of interpretation does not blame the person. It helps the person understand the structure. And once the structure becomes clearer, tuning becomes possible. In part 0, we practiced accepting the baseline egogram as our basic blueprint. In part 1, we begin to observe how that blueprint moves in real weather. In other words, we are no longer looking only at a static personality chart. We are looking at a living waveform. That is the main point of this section. The momentary egogram is not a report card that evaluates you. It is a map for tuning. It can show where energy may need to cool down. It can show where energy may need to come back online. And it can show where choice needs to be recovered. When we can read that map, we can find our footing again, even while we are emotionally shaken. We do not have to remain someone who is simply carried along by emotion. Little by little, we can become someone who reads and works with the movement of the mind's engine. Let's close with this. Today's fluctuation is not all of me. A momentary waveform is not a verdict on personality. It is a signal showing what is moving inside me right now. We can read that signal, and when we can read it, we can tune again.